is a form of child sex abuse, and what we normally see with sexual exploitation is that a person or a group of people will give a child something that the child really wants or really needs, and as soon as they've given the child that, they'll expect and they'll force the child to have sex with them in return for it. And so we can give you a few examples of the type of thing that we see. Sometimes children will be desperate for a new mobile phone or clothes or money, and the perpetrator, the offender, will see that, and they'll offer to assist the child, or they'll give them a new phone or offer to do so. And as soon as they've done that, they'll force the child into having sex in return. They'll say that the child owes them for that. That's one example.
Right.
Other examples include they will give the child alcohol or drugs, and they'll put them in a position whereby they can't really stop the person forcing themselves on them, and they'll take advantage of them that way. Another example, they don't actually have to give them anything physical. They might actually give them some affection.
Right.
You might see a child that's low in self-esteem or low in confidence, and they'll pretend to be the boyfriend. And they're not really. What they are is often an adult who's having sex with a child.
Right.
But the child, because the child's got vulnerabilities themselves and they need a bit of affection, they actually think that's the boyfriend. It's not really. It's somebody who's abusing them. In London, and we can go into this shortly as to what the London picture looks like, we also see quite a lot of gang issues. So in certain areas, where there are street gangs, they will offer a child protection, and they'll say, come and join our gang and we'll look after you. When they do that, they'll ask the child to hold some drugs for them, or firearms or knives, i.e. the child will then be taking the risk for the gang. And then as soon as they're involved at that level, they'll also start sexually abusing them. So there's a number of different ways it can happen. And one of the main issues with it that we don't tend to see in other sexual offences is that the child often doesn't think they're a victim at all. They think they're in a normal situation. They don't see themselves as being victimised, so they don't report it. And one of the reasons why we're here today, and over the next week we're going to be pushing out some messages on child sexual exploitation, is to tell people that we need them to help us, and we need them to tell us about it, because the children don't come forward and report it. It's something that we all have to look out for.
That's quite an interesting point you've made, John. I mean, children don't actually know that it's wrong. They don't realize it's wrong. And that's why there's nothing to report. I mean, like you said yourself, one of the scenarios is like the child thinks that they're in love with the person. So which sort of gifts would the child expect to get? Maybe a nice mobile phone?
Yeah, we see it. Sometimes we deal with cases and we'll arrest somebody and we'll seize their IT, and we can see the communications they have, and it's exactly that. They'll be offering them things like that: phones, clothes, money, drugs, alcohol, anything to tempt the child to come and see them and to have sex with them. I'm afraid that's what goes on. It's been quite an eye-opener for me doing it, and you know, again, we can talk about the types of exploitation that we do see, and that online example that we were talking about just then, that is certainly more and more prevalent. It's a real risk via social media when anyone speaks to anybody, and often we'll see children especially who are targeted in that way.
And John, how are you pushing the awareness for CSE forward?
So next Saturday is National CSE Day. It's the same date every year. It's the 18th of March.
Okay.
And in the lead up to that, starting from Monday, we've asked all of our colleagues on the various London boroughs, the 32 of them, to take action themselves to go and raise awareness either at schools or in care homes or at public transport areas, and to tell people about CSE, to publicise any action they're taking, to explain what it's like in their areas, so local people can understand what the picture looks like.
Right.
So although I can talk about it from a London perspective, generally it changes depending on which part of London you are, and in the UK. So what we've seen previously in Rotherham or in Oxford or in Rochdale, which is groups of men targeting younger women, younger girls, is not really necessarily what we see in London. The main issues that we see in London are, unfortunately, we see a lot of children exploiting each other. And so people of a similar age group or a year or two older than the victim. In the main way that they do that in London is we see a lot of them videoing a sexual encounter or asking for a nude photo, and then they use it to blackmail often the girl, because most of it does happen to girls, into doing more and more explicit acts with them, having sex with them, and then passing them around their friends as well to do that, with the threat that if they don't do it, they're going to circulate the video or the nude photos online to all of their family, their friends, their schools and so on. We see that quite a lot. On a daily basis, I would say that we see that type of
How old are these
allegation.
children now? when you say-
So the main age for sexual exploitation in London, the average age is about 15, but to be honest with you, it can vary between 10 to 16. The main age is 14, 15, 16, but it can go either way of that. And especially for the online stuff, you tend to get younger children being targeted for that. So in London, when we talk about CSE, we can talk about children on children, which is a significant issue. Maybe a third of the cases we get are like that. We also see the online stuff that I've just talked about, and one of the big, real threatening issues is men online who are targeting girls and persuading them to come and meet them and having sex with them. Grooming online is an issue.
Right.
And is vastly underreported. Most of the girls don't report that. We come across it when we arrest the man for one offence and we find out he's been targeting many other girls at the same time. We also see a lot of girls and boys who go missing. And unfortunately, when people go missing, they're at much higher risk. So when we did some research in about 2014-15, we found out that about half of our victims had been missing previously, and many of them had had a sexual offence committed whilst they were missing. They were at real high risk.
I mean, what are the other statistics that you have? Because there's a lot of information.
Yeah.
I mean, within the Asian community, do a lot of people report CSE? Or?
No, and that's one of the benefits of being here today. And I think
Right.
one of the reasons we wanted to come and talk on your show is because we feel that there's a lack of reporting amongst the Asian community. There is generally, to be honest with you. I'll give you some statistics. I mean, so in 2014, we were told about 1,100 children who people had fears that they might be vulnerable to CSE.
Right.
Not necessarily a crime had taken place, but they were going missing, they were hanging around with older men, that type of thing. Last year there was 1,600, so the increase was about 42%. In terms of crimes, in 2014 there was about 600 that were linked to sexual exploitation. Last year there was 900, so there's like virtually a 50% increase.
Gosh.
But I think out of the victims last year that or the potential victims of exploitation, out of the 1,600 that we were told about, I think about 145 were from the Asian community. It's about 9%, 8 or 9% it was. Now, we don't think that's reflective of the Asian community in London. So we would say that, unfortunately, we think that there's less people from the Asian community reporting it than are likely to be victims, and we really want people to come forward and tell us about it. So we can look after the victims and we can stop people who are committing those offences.
Definitely. I mean, Bhupendra, it's so nice to have you over here as well. I mean, why do you feel that maybe the Asian community is not coming forward? Why are people not reporting this?
Yeah, I think there's a lack of trust. They don't know what the police can do. There are a number of organisations that we work with, a number of communities I've done presentations to where I've been invited to raising that profile. If people have the information as to what CSE is, what they can do about it, that gives you that sort of opportunity to actually then alert police, because that's what we're after. This is what today's about.
Yeah, I mean, in your line of work, you've been with the police for a number of years now.
Yes.
And tell me how you got involved into this project with CSE.
I've been on the command about 8 years. Previously, I've done various other commands. I'm now the National CSE Coordinator for the London region, so I speak to my colleagues up and down the country, sharing best practice around what's happening, for example, in Greater Manchester, if they're doing something around CSE which improves their detection rates or things like that, then I'll try to sort of bring that back into London if they're doing something differently, and vice versa. If it's in the Met that we've done a lot of stuff, proactive work, we can share that information with other forces so we can actually combat CSE nationally, because David Cameron, if you remember a couple of years ago, he declared CSE as a national threat.
Definitely. I mean, what can we do from stopping the figures that John just told us from increasing or making things worse? What can we do to kind of completely combat this and end this, because it's wrong?
I don't think we can end it in any shape or form completely, because I think there are going to be perpetrators out there, doing horrible things to young people. I think one of the things that John talked about is about the child. I think it's important to get into perspective. A child we're referring to is under the age of 18 as well.
Yes.
So, you've got the legal age of consensual sexual intercourse is 16, but actual for CSE purposes is actually under 18. So you've got the two sort of ages which are quite important to reflect to the community.
That's really interesting to know. So if you're 16 and you consent, it's okay, but it's only if you're comfortable. I mean, Kiran, as a woman, because most of the victims are girls, if you're feeling uncomfortable, how do you say no? If you think you're in love with the person, how would that child say no? How would they explain to that person that they're not comfortable?
I think, you know, it is difficult for children in London to say no. Children need to be aware of what CSE, children need to be aware of the warning signs. And, you know, and that's why we're here. We're here to let children know that they can speak to us. We are, the reason we work where we work is because we're passionate. You know, I'm a detective, I'm passionate about what I do. I chose to work in this department. We will keep coming and speaking to you. We will try and build a rapport with you. We will do what we can to make you feel comfortable in order for you to speak to us.
But what are the signs? I mean, you know, John explained really well at the start of the show exactly what CSE is. Bhupendra explained as well in his own words how he feels the department is helping, and even you're telling us that the help is there. But what are the signs? Say, for example, right now, many parents are watching at home, many teachers are watching, doctors are watching, you know, care workers are watching, and even children are watching. What are the signs? How do you know that maybe if your friend is a victim of CSE, how do you know?
There is a lot of signs. The two main links to victims of CSE are children that go missing and children that go missing from school or don't come home for long periods of time and getting involved in gangs. Teachers need to make contact with the police and tell us, put referrals in. The parents need to report when their child goes missing. Even if they don't come home at a certain time, they need to make the police aware that, you know, their child is going missing. There's so many signs. You have sexualized behavior. You could have your child sexting online, sending indecent images. A child who,
Alcohol.
you know, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, unexplained gifts. You know, if you're a parent and your child's wearing brand new trainers or they've got a phone, where do they get the phone from?
Yeah.
Their attitude may change. They may become withdrawn. You have a child who, you know, is self-harming and has suicidal thoughts.
Gosh, so there's so many signs
there
actually
is
there.
so many signs.
Yeah.
And what I would say, I would say collectively a few signs together should make a parent worried and think to themselves, you know, what is going on in my child's life, or
Definitely,
teachers.
they need to find out. And Bhupendra, what would you say that as a parent, how could they speak to the child without intimidating them or without them feeling as if they're being investigated for
I
something?
think that's a really good point, and I know that you know, we're not asking parents to become detectives. We're not saying that. What we're saying is having an interest in what your child is doing. If they're doing the homework upstairs, and being that friend of that child, because if you've got that friendship, hopefully that child, if they've had that contact with the perpetrator, be it online or otherwise, at least the child feels comfortable to go to the parent saying, look, I've just been sent a message, I'm not happy about this. At least that communication is sort of there between the parent and child. If you have a situation where, you know, you're taking no sort of interest in your child, then that child is isolated and then they feel unloved.
आगाह रहें, अगर ये फिल्म सिनेमा हॉल्स में दिखाई जाए तो सिर्फ 15 साल से ज्यादा उम्र वाले नाजरीन के लिए मुनासिब हो। जो आप देखने लगे हैं वो एक हकीकी वाकया है। यहाँ दिखाए गए कुछ मंजर शायद चंद नाजरीन को
Someone else will, and you don't know who that someone else is. I mean, John, could you give us an example of when someone's actually been caught, when someone's actually come forward, and with that little bit of information, you've actually been able to use that and apply it in a positive way?
Yeah, so again, part of the reason here is to help people, encourage people to tell us if they've got any concerns, if they see anything a bit suspicious. So even just a few months ago, an example would be a member of the public saw a child getting into a car with an older adult, and the adult appeared to be trying to hide his face. And the member of the public called the police, and I'm sure most probably wouldn't, so it's a really good job that they did. And the police arrived, and there was a disclosure made of a serious sexual incident, and the person was arrested. So it's about having courage to put the phone call in.
Yes.
And if you are uncomfortable and you think something's not right, you're probably right, and we'd encourage you to do that.
And does that reporting help? Because I imagine if that one perpetrator is going to, so say, allegedly take that victim or take that one person to maybe his friends or his gang members, his group members, could you potentially, with that one statement, with that one witness statement, actually make sure that quite a lot of gang members or maybe the whole gang is caught?
No, you're absolutely right. So in these type of situations, they don't normally target one person. They've targeted many, and we happen to have arrived at a point when they've got one victim with them. But when you arrest them, when you seize their IT, their phones, computers, and when you have a look through, suddenly you'll find a lot of other victims that they've been targeting as well, and other potential suspects. So that one bit of information like that can be really important for us.
Yes. I mean, Kieran, normally within the Asian community, you would try to hide things. Even when it comes to, say, sexual abuse, assault, you try to kind of cover things up and just think, I don't want to tell anyone, it's within the family, so just be quiet, or it happened to my daughter, I don't want the world to know, it'll be difficult for me to marry her off later. And you kind of keep it hidden. What would your message be to the mothers out there who are hiding this? Because you're trying to kind of save your so-called family honor and hiding this nasty thing that's happening with your daughter, but then there's so many other daughters out there that are potentially being exploited and can be exploited. Because with every victim, with every perpetrator that gets away, he just gets stronger and thinks, I can get away with it. What would your message be to those mothers?
I would say come forward and report it. We are a diverse police force. We speak all different languages. We have interpreters. We use language line. Please come forward and speak to us. I totally understand, the community, and sometimes people feel that they do want to hide this. This will have long-lasting effects on your children, and could break relationships when your children get older. And there may be a vast amount of girls out there who are being sexually targeted and sexually abused. We need to deal with this, and we need every community to come forward.
I think the important thing is if the family thinks they should hide it, it's not necessarily ever going to be hidden, because a lot of the offending is recorded. We find it all the time, videos, photographs and so on. So it's much better to come to us, and then we can put a stop to that. We can seize all that stuff, we can get rid of it, so it doesn't go out into the public arena. Whereas if you're just hoping that it doesn't, there's no guarantees there. Some things do come to light later on, so we can deal with it better for you.
I mean, John's just said it. He's taking the words exactly out of my mouth, because they can deal with it for you and they can end it. Now, I want to show you a very important video. It's called Kaylee's Love Story. You've probably seen it on YouTube. You've probably seen it since last night evening. You've seen it on the channel as well. Have a look at it again and really look at it with care, with detail this time. We'll be discussing this after this video.
I'll never forget the first time we met. We clicked right away.
Hi, love.
Hiya, Mum. I could talk to him for hours. It was as if we were old friends.
I'll just take that nice crunchy bit there, if you don't mind.
Yes, that'll make a change.
Lovely.
Good.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
Am I alright to stay at Katie's tomorrow?
Yeah, alright.
Mum and Dad wouldn't understand. They don't know that he's different. He wants to meet for a few drinks. He treats me like an adult. I think he might be the one. I really do. Mum and Dad wouldn't understand though. They don't know that he's different. He wants me to meet his friends, so he must be serious about it.
Get off me! Go away! Help me! Help! Get off! Help me! Somebody help me!
I could stay here forever. I really think we love each other. But Mum and Dad wouldn't understand. They don't know that he's different.
Welcome back. That was Kaylee's love story. It kind of literally it takes your heart out and it just leaves you gobsmacked. You would never think that this can happen to a child, a daughter, someone's sister, someone's daughter, but it's happened. And thank God the perpetrators were caught. Thank God that they've been sentenced. But a child died. A girl lost her life. I mean, John, what do you do when you see a case like that? It must make your blood boil.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a horrendous case. And there's Kaylee, and there's also a young boy called Brett Bednar, who was also murdered as a result of online grooming. So that's at least two cases that we know of. But the cases that we see on social media, as you've seen from that video there, that went through a stage of meeting somebody online, being sexually abused, and then being murdered. Well, fortunately, people don't tend to get murdered as a result of it, but there have been these two really tragic cases.
Yes.
but we see many people sexually abused. So it goes up to that stage of meeting someone, grooming them online, persuading them to come and meet them, and then abusing them. Now, it's a growing issue for us, and it's probably the biggest concerns that we have in relation to sexual exploitation at the moment, because we genuinely don't know how many people are affected by it. I think that there are many men sitting out there at the moment who are online now trying to speak to children and persuade them to go around to their addresses and have sex with them. They're not doing it in any underhand way in terms of being on the dark web or something that most people wouldn't use. This is normal mainstream social media. You're talking about Snapchat, Facebook, WhatsApp, just normal things, and they're just approaching the children directly online. They're not hiding how old they are. They're being very open about it. Some of the men are 40s, in their 50s maybe, equally some in the 20s as well, or late teens. And the children who are being abused, they're not hiding their age. It's very clear what the ages are, and yet they're still prepared to persuade the child to come and meet them and have sex. Now, quite simply, in the UK, you can't have sex with a child under 16, and that's the law.
Right.
You know, and they know that, but they're still prepared to go ahead with it.
I mean, in Kaylee's love story, so many messages were sent. It was over 2,000 messages?
About 2,500 in a space of about 7 days.
My goodness, so many messages. And Pupendra, I also wanted to ask you, if somebody, say it's your boyfriend, you think that person is your boyfriend or that person loves you, they ask you to send an indecent picture of yourself, maybe a topless picture.
Right, yes.
What do you do?
So basically, the law states that undertaking indecent images of children under the age of 18 is an offence. So if you take a picture, you're actually making the picture. You can actually commit an offence of making, distributing, and producing. So you've got those offences. So children need to realise that if actually taking an indecent image and then sending it to someone, they've committed 2 offences. So
if a 13-year-old gets a message from this so-called person that they've met online, and then they say, send me a topless picture of yourself, and then you send it, that's wrong.
That's wrong, that's an offence, yes.
So that person asking you to do that, that's wrong as well.
That's wrong, but if that message is then sent to the person anonymously, or if that person says, send me a picture, you could have the incitement offence as well. So there are another sort of row of offences that you can go down for the person that's actually asked the person, the victim, for those pictures. But that's a different ball game, because we're talking about incitement, because they're inciting the child to take an indecent image and then send it to the perpetrator.
And John, in the future, can that same picture be used for, say, blackmail?
It does. We see it every day. So what happens, it's usually between children, but it can be from adults to children as well. They will, again, sometimes online, they will persuade a child to send an image, and as soon as they've got that image, they'll blackmail the child into doing other very explicit and horrible acts on webcam. And if they don't do that, they'll say, I'm going to send this image to your family, to your friends, to your school. And children do sometimes comply with that blackmail demand. And you can just imagine, and we dealt with a case last year, I think the victim was 12, the offender was in his 20s, and what that child went through was absolutely disgusting. And this is not rare. And honestly, if anything comes out of the conversation we're having at the moment, people have got to understand that when you think you're in a relationship with someone, if you send something that you think is just a harmless photo, that is potentially going to be used to blackmail you, and you're put in a very difficult position then. And we see it continually. People have got to be aware of this. It's a very serious issue. Sexting sounds like it's not particularly serious. It's something you shouldn't really be doing. But in fact, we see it develop in very, very serious cases.
So if you've sent a picture to someone, or if you're a bit reluctant to send a picture to this person you've met online, they show you another picture. She sent it. It's all right. You can do it. There's nothing wrong with it.
Just don't do it. It's not worth it. I mean, and certainly even if you're having even if you're sending a picture to someone you're in a friendship or relationship with at the moment, that may not last. And if you fall out in a bad way, what's going to happen to that photo then? So you've really got to think carefully about it. We see it all the time, and people are put in very awful positions by it, and it causes a great deal of mental stress and harm for them.
And sometimes what you have as well is situations where if you think that you're communicating with a person of your age, for example, so a 16-year-old girl with a 16-year-old boy, when in fact the picture they're sending is actually not of a 16-year-old. In fact, they'll purport to be someone who's 16, when in fact they may be over 20, So you could have that scenario. So
Online, you can be anyone.
exactly, because you don't know the true identity. It's, unless you know that person personally, you're not going to know who you're actually communicating with. So you could have that scenario: 25-year-old male with a 16-year-old, 14-year-old girl.
And you'll be sending them all these messages, and you're thinking, I'm just talking to
A 16,
a
likewise
16-year-old.
age. Yes, that's right.
So
That's
to
right.
a person. I mean, Kieran, in your line of work, if you do notice, like say you do see these victims, and when they come to you, in their mind, they think that they're in love, nothing's wrong. How do you get through to someone like that?
I would say it is difficult to get through to people that, you know, these people do not love you.
Right.
It's just about us educating children that these are, you know, fake relationships. If someone loves you, they would not, you know, allow you to run their drugs for them. You know, they would want you to be in school. They wouldn't tell you to go missing for days on end and stay in flats.
But he's just bought me a phone. I'm just thinking, I'm putting myself in the shoes of that child.
Yeah.
I can't afford a phone myself. You know, my dad doesn't get me a phone. Mum's not bought me a phone. Oh, he's bought me a really nice, the latest iPhone. I've got the best perfume. I've got everything I want. I've got money in my pocket. So he really does love me. He does care about me. He sends me all these messages, sends me good night, good morning, everything.
But in order for him to give you that phone, what are you doing?
But does that come straight away, or in your experience with the victims, does it come a bit later
it can.
on?
Like, you know, we were talking about Kaylee's love story.
Yeah.
Look how quickly the messages were sent. It could be a matter of 2 days,
Gosh.
3 days, you know. There's no time limit on this. It can be straight away. Nothing is free, essentially, is it?
No.
And like, you know, like we were saying, the biggest issue is that these girls do not feel that they are victims of sexual exploitation. And we're here to tell parents, teachers, professionals, you know, these are the warning signs, and to let children know this is what is happening to you.
I think, you know, with the children, if you're in a relationship and you're getting a new phone, or they're giving you money or whatever they're giving you, if they're making you do something or asking you to do something that you really don't feel comfortable about or don't want to do, that's not love, that's not a relationship. And that's what you've got to think, you know. And I also, because a lot of the children don't come forward and tell us what's happening, you know, we're also asking their friends, you know. So if their friends know what's happening, please tell us, because we can look after them and we can stop that offender doing it to anyone else.
So if your friend's boyfriend is slightly older and he's got a really nice car, but he's slightly older, he always collects her from school, always buys her gifts, sometimes gives you a lift home as well, it's not really right, is it?
It depends on the circumstances, because obviously, you know, in theory, if a child's 16 and in a consensual relationship with someone who's 20, 21, 22, there's not necessarily an offence there. But if that person is actually also asking that child to have sex with their friends or taking indecent images of them, yes, that's wrong, and we'll deal with that.
You know, or if your friend's behaviour is changed,
Right.
she doesn't want to come shopping with you, and she's out all night going to parties, and you know, she's now hanging around with gang members. I mean, you could always call us and feed that information to us, and we will try and, you know, do what we can.
Definitely. I mean, Bhupendra, are there any models that these perpetrators use? Because you've got the boyfriend model, which we've seen.
The older boyfriend model,
You know,
yes.
are there any other models that they use?
Well, the online John talked about, obviously, is a classic example, is probably the higher end of the number of referrals we get. But you get the gangs model, you know, the groups of gangs, and some of the graphic details, and you know, your audience need to listen to this, because you know, we investigate these cases where there is, as part of an initiation of a gang, the victim will be asked to perform sexual acts upon other gang members to be allowed to be part of the gang member. So this goes on, and you know, people need to be realistic about this. This happens on a day-to-day basis in London. So it's just making sure that the parents have that information if they suspect, and it's not just about one indicator. If it's a number of indicators of CSE, then I think your gut feeling, as John was saying, you know, then you're probably right that something is not right, you know.
Now, I see you and I hear you, and I completely agree with you that these things do happen, because you know, the police department, you wouldn't be lying to me on live TV. But I'm thinking about a parent sitting at home thinking, not my child. You know, all Asian children are virgins. You know, all of our daughters are virgins. But they never have sex. They never go out. We don't even use that word in the house. So it can't happen to me, to my family member. Never.
This is a new generation now. Now we, you know, Asians have come from subcontinent and from Africa and so forth. And kids now, the kids we're talking about, actually born and bred in Britain. So their first language is in English.
Yeah.
So they know what's going on. They're more streetwise as well. So parents who may be a bit older, who may not recognise what CSE doesn't exist, or the word doesn't exist in India, I'm sure. But people need to be aware of what it is, as John has explained, and being able to do something about it. So if you think your gut feeling is, I'm not happy about this, whether it be your child or someone else's child, it's taking that active step, it's actually reporting it.
I mean, Kieran, would you like to say anything?
People need to realise that perpetrators are all different ages, all different races, from all different communities and all different backgrounds. There's nothing specific really, you know, and likewise the victims are as well. They're all different types of victims from all different communities, and London is so diverse. So there are going to be victims out there who, you know, due to one, they've got to deal with what's happening with them, and then they've got to deal with the community issues as well. And I totally understand that it's really difficult, but you need to tell us and you need to come forward.
I mean, one of the best ways is maybe community leaders. I mean, is there any way that maybe community leaders, say if you've got a group for youngsters, for young children, is there any way that those leaders can come to you and maybe
the contact details will be aired, I'm sure, on the show. But I've done a number of presentations for the Sikh community, the Hindu communities, where I've been asked to do presentations around CSE. So I would encourage, if community leaders want that input from the police, you know, contact your local police and, you know, or us, and we'll make sure that we deliver that input around CSE so that the communities are aware of what's happening. Some people may not have Sky, so they may not have that opportunity to know what we're actually talking about now. So at least sharing that information with other community leaders and then saying, look, actually I've seen this show on air, and, you know, I think we would be grateful if an input around CSE can be delivered.
Now the message is very clear to all of our viewers, and from Kiran, Bhupendra and John. Report it. If you feel something is wrong, you need to come forward and report it, because it's not just about the one child. This is about whole communities that are being destroyed. And if nobody comes forward and nobody reports this, how are we going to put an end to this? Now I want to show you Kaylee's love story in Punjabi now. For our Punjabi viewers, Hindi viewers, so make sure you watch this and do take it in, and obviously please do give us your feedback as well.
ਚੇਤਾਵਨੀ, ਇਹ ਫਿਲਮ ਸਿਨੇਮਾ ਹਾਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਿਰਫ 15 ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਉਮਰ ਦੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਪ੍ਰਮਾਣਿਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਵੇਗੀ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੋ ਵੇਖਣ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਸੱਚੀ ਘਟਨਾ ਹੈ। ਕੁਝ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ ਵਿਖਾਏ ਗਏ ਕੁਝ ਦ੍ਰਿਸ਼ ਪਰੇਸ਼ਾਨ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਨ। ਸਾਡੀ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਭੁੱਲੇਗੀ। ਸਾਡੇ ਤਾਰ ਪਾਸ ਉਸੇ ਵੇਲੇ ਜੁੜ ਗਏ। ਕੇਲੀ ਧੀਏ, ਆਈ ਮਾਂ। लगता सी उस नाल घंटियां गल्लां करती रहा। जिवें वरियां पुराने दोस्त होइए। मैं कल केटी दी कोल रात रुक सकती हाँ? हाँ, क्यों नहीं? मम्मी पापा नहीं समझणगे। वो नहीं जानते कि वो तुझे तो कितना वक्त है। ਬਸ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਡਰਿੰਕਸ ਤੇ ਕੁਝ ਵਕਤ ਗੁਜ਼ਾਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਵੱਡਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁਝ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ। ਮੰਮੀ ਪਾਪਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਮਝਣਗੇ। ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਦੂਜਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਵੱਖ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਦੋਸਤਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲਾਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਜਾਨੀ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਕੁਝ ਖਾਸ ਹਾਂ। ਛੱਡੋ ਮੈਨੂੰ, ਹਟੋ, ਬਚਾਓ, ਬਚਾਓ, ਕੋਈ ਹੈ। ਛੱਡੋ ਮੈਨੂੰ, ਹਟੋ, ਦੂਰ ਹਟੋ, ਕੋਈ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਚਾਓ। ਮੈਂ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਨਾਲ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ। ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨੂੰ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਪਰ ਮੰਮੀ ਪਾਪਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਮਝਣਗੇ। ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਦੂਜਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਵੱਖ ਹੈ। अक्टूबर 2015 15 ਸਾਲ ਦੀ ਕੇਲੀ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਫੇਸਬੁੱਕ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਇੱਕ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਅਣਜਾਣ ਆਦਮੀ ਤੋਂ। 15 ਦਿਨ 'ਚ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਬਲਾਤਕਾਰ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਹੱਤਿਆ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ। ਉਸ ਦੀ ਲਾਸ਼ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਜੰਗਲ ਝਾੜੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁੱਟ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ। 5 ਅਪ੍ਰੈਲ 2016 ਨੂੰ ਲਿਊਕ ਹਾਰਲੋ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਨਾਬਾਲਗ ਕੁੜੀ ਨੂੰ ਵਰਗਲਾ ਕੇ ਉਸ ਦਾ 2 ਵਾਰ ਯੌਨ ਸ਼ੋਸ਼ਣ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਗੁਨਾਹ ਕਬੂਲ ਕੀਤਾ। 28 ਜੂਨ 2016 ਨੂੰ ਨੌਟਿੰਗਹਮ ਕ੍ਰਾਊਨ ਕੋਰਟ ਮੁਕੱਦਮੇ ਦੇ ਫੈਸਲੇ ਦੇ ਤਹਿਤ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਬਰਦਸਤੀ ਬੰਦੀ ਬਣਾਏ ਰੱਖਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਦੋਸ਼ੀ ਕਰਾਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਮੁਕੱਦਮੇ ਦੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ 'ਚ ਹੀ ਉਸਨੇ ਕਬੂਲ ਕਰ ਲਿੱਤਾ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਉਹ 2 ਹੋਰ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਯੌਨ ਸ਼ੋਸ਼ਣ ਕਰ ਚੁੱਕਿਆ ਹੈ। ਉਸ ਨੂੰ 12 ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਜੇਲ੍ਹ ਹੋਈ। 5 ਅਪ੍ਰੈਲ 2016 ਨੂੰ ਲਿਊਕ ਹਾਰਲੋ ਦੇ ਪੜੋਸੀ ਸਟੀਵਨ ਬੀਡਮੈਨ ਨੇ ਬਲਾਤਕਾਰ ਅਤੇ ਹੱਤਿਆ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਗੁਨਾਹ ਕਬੂਲ ਕੀਤਾ। 27 ਜੂਨ 2016 ਨੂੰ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਬਰਦਸਤੀ ਬੰਦੀ ਬਣਾਏ ਰੱਖਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਦੋਸ਼ੀ ਕਰਾਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਉਹਨੂੰ ਉਮਰ ਕੈਦ ਦੀ ਸਜ਼ਾ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ, ਜਾਨੇ ਕਿ ਘੱਟ ਤੋਂ ਘੱਟ 35 ਸਾਲ। ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਸੀ ਕੇਲੀ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੇਮ ਕਹਾਣੀ। ਜ਼ਰਾ ਸੋਚੋ, ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਨਲਾਈਨ ਪਹਿਚਾਣ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਉਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅਸਲ 'ਚ ਕਿਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪਹਿਚਾਣ ਵਧਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ। ਇਹ ਫਿਲਮ ਕੇਲੀ ਦੇ ਮਾਤਾ-ਪਿਤਾ ਦੇ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਨਾਲ ਬਣਾਈ ਗਈ ਹੈ।
Welcome back. That was very, very heart-wrenching to watch. It's so sad to see a child lose her life through when it's no fault of her own. And this is what we want you to understand. And if you put your children forward in front of the TV to make sure that they watch this, you all need to understand, especially if you're a child, you're going through this, or if you feel maybe a friend of yours is going through CSE, you need to understand it's not your fault. It's really important. Bhupendra, how is the police force bringing this message forward? Do the victims know that it's not their fault?
That's what we every time we engage with a child, a young person, you know, we reassure our victims that it isn't their fault, you know, and we've got specially trained detectives who are, you know, investigate these kind of offences on a day-to-day basis, you know, and it's that engagement and that rapport building, getting that trust from the young person to that have confidence in the police officer through which we get the disclosures. So we never judge our victims, we never criticise what they've done. Actually, we're there to help them and support them. That's the most important thing.
Definitely. I mean, John, you know, we've spent so long now, even earlier before the show, discussing CSE, and even during the show, I've not once heard you mention a victim's name or their personal details. Is that something that confidentiality is always there?
Absolutely. So when they come in and talk to us, you know, we'll have that discussion with them about what they want to do, and we'll agree with them what's the best move for them. We wouldn't push them into doing anything they didn't want to do. If they don't want to go ahead with anything, that's fine. But all we would say, that's fine, but come and talk to us so we at least know who the offender is. Right. If you don't want to go ahead with anything, that's okay. We just want to make sure you're okay, and we'll stop that person doing it. If they did want to go to court and did want to do a prosecution, it's against the law to name them in public anyway. So they are protected. You know, their names wouldn't be read out at all. You know, we will ensure that there's the minimum possible stress for them in those circumstances.
That's, you know, I think that would be very, very reassuring to a lot of children out there that are watching today. The only thing is, with the certain areas of the law, it becomes very difficult to understand. So the legal age for consent, so that means that you're agreeing to have sex with someone with your own will, and you're allowed to legally. What is the age?
That's right. So
again?
it is a bit confusing though. There's a lot of different laws, but the most easy ones to remember is the age of consent is 16.
Okay.
You're not allowed to have sex with somebody under 16.
Right.
There's more serious offences. I mean, if you had sex with someone under 13, that is rape, and you are likely to go to prison for that.
Okay.
Also, in between the ages of 16 to 18, under the age of 18, you can't take a photo, an indecent photo of a child, and you certainly can't pay that child for sex. Right. So those are the main issues. Don't have sex with a child under 16. And between and under 18, you can't pay that child for sex or take photos. Those are the main important ones to know.
So if someone's giving you free alcohol or free drugs, and in return they're asking for sex, that's actually wrong.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
A crime.
Yes.
That's definitely a crime. And that child at that time...
It fits the definition for sexual exploitation. So again, sexual exploitation is you're giving a child something,
right,
and then you're kind of demanding sex in return. Now, if you're giving a child alcohol or drugs in order to stupefy them so they're not really conscious or able to make a decision on that, that is an offence, yeah.
And even to say a scenario, that child knows the person, and that person says to them, I've been giving you loads of freebies for so long, I've been taking you to McDonald's, I've been giving you a free phone, I've been giving you money all this time, now I'm in a bit of trouble, I owe a bit of debt to my friends, please can you sleep with my mate?
Yeah, that's exploitation.
Yep. That's wrong.
Yes.
And if you know that that's happened to your friend, or is happening to maybe your best friend, can that person report it?
Yeah, of course. You don't have to be a victim to come and tell the police.
Right.
If your friend is being affected in that way and you've got real concerns for your friend's well-being, come and tell us, and we can help your friend then, and we can also stop that other person doing it. And again, the same levels of protection will apply. Mm-hmm. You know, we're not going to just go and give your name out. You know, right, that's a one-to-one conversation with someone like Kieran at the station. So we can have a very sensitive, discreet conversation about that.
And if you feel that maybe your neighbour's child's behaviour has changed quite a lot, and they've become kind of very quiet within themselves, and they're always going out at odd hours, and you just think that some things are not right. You've tried speaking to the parents, it doesn't add up. You've seen bruises on her, some other signs which you just think, it's not right. She's got a very expensive handbag, and she's got a new phone, or she's got some new gadgets which her parents couldn't afford, or she didn't have. Can you report that as well?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, and you're exactly right. What it does, what usually happens is there's a number of different things that spring to mind. As you say, you might see injuries on a child. You might see them with really expensive items. You might see them in the company with older men going out at night time. That type of thing flags up concerns, and we'd want to know about that. And again, you can speak to us in confidence, and then we can decide the best way of going about solving it.
Definitely. I mean, Bhupendra, normally any Asian family who's watching this, you would think, we're a respectable family, this is not going to happen to us, it can never be my family, it will never be my child. What message would you like to give to the parents that are watching?
I think that the most important thing is CSE isn't gender specific, it's not race specific, it's not religion specific, and sexual orientation specific as well. It happens in every community throughout London. You know, as Kieran has said, London is so diverse. We've got numerous different dialects of languages that's spoken in London. So it happens in any community, and perpetrators will not target any particular race or gender or sex. this happens to boys as well. So we've been talking about girls, majority of the conversation we've had for the last 45 minutes, but actually it happens to boys as well. So it's important that it could be happening in an Asian community, so be aware of this.
Auntie, can I just say, when you say people are watching and they might think, well, it's not going to happen to my child.
Yeah.
Online social media means it will happen to any child. So that the online social media now means any single child anywhere is vulnerable, because these people don't target specific children, they'll target anybody.
So they'll just send out mail shots maybe, or loads of messages.
They'll start liking, they'll like a child, they'll make a nice complimentary comment about them, they'll ask them to be a friend. Yes, the child will allow them to be a friend, and then suddenly they've got access to all of that child's friends as well, and the abuse goes on and on. They'll target many, hundreds of people, at one time.
It's that grooming process.
Yeah.
It's a process that the perpetrator will use time and time again. They'll send out thousands and thousands of messages, and then you may get that one hook where that young person is so vulnerable because they've been, they've fallen out with their parents or they've fallen out with their friends, and you've got a situation where they think, actually, someone's paying me a compliment.
Yeah.
So, and then that relationship is then, that connection is made, and then that perpetrator will then keep on going in communication with that young person, gaining that trust, and then the sort of grooming process is well established, and then they'll have that meet and then sexual encounter.
Especially what I would say, if you have got social media sites that are open accounts.
Yes.
It's so easy for perpetrators to look at your pictures. For
So
example,
what do you do to
Instagram,
a Facebook account?
you need to make your account private.
Okay.
That's what people need to do. Because if you have got open accounts, they will know the age that you're
Yeah.
at. They will see your pictures and they will know what you like, what sort of shoes you're wearing or handbags, and what area you live in. That information is all fed for them.
Which school
and
you
it's
go
so
to,
easy
everything.
to get that information.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure your accounts are private.
And a lot of kids nowadays, children, they've got mobile phones. They're expensive or not, doesn't really matter. They've got smartphones. So one of the important things I think for as a parent is having that registration of that phone in the parent's name. So they've got some sort of control over that phone. We're not asking parents to become detectives or spies or anything on their kids, because we don't want that. It's not about that kind of relationship. It's having that some sort of control, and then if you feel something's not right, and then having that conversation with the child, saying, look, you spent X amount last month. There've been lots and lots of texts to this common number. Who is it? That kind of conversation with the parent and the child.
That's very important. I mean, Kieran, you actually speak to so many victims, face to face. Do they easily come forward?
No, to be honest, I would say most of our referrals are from professionals, schools, social services, health, anonymous referrals from members of the public. A lot of these girls will not come forward, but we will do what we can to speak to them, and if it's going to see them every week, we will do that. And a lot of them don't want to talk to us. But we need to build these rapports, and they need to engage with us.
But if they do talk to you, you're not going to intimidate them in any way. There's nothing to be fearful of, is there?
No. I mean, these girls can give us information that we could look into without telling us who their friends are, and give us perpetrators' details, and then we can work on that information. But we won't intimidate these girls. No, we don't do that.
Gosh.
We take it at their pace. It's what they want. Essentially, it's their lives, but we need to make sure that they're safe.
See, they actually care about you. These are people, organizations that actually put your interests first. So they work at your pace. If you're comfortable, communicate with them. Definitely contact them. If you're worried about a friend, if you're worried about a neighbor's daughter or a neighbor's son, definitely get in touch with us. Now we've got a very few minutes left for the show. I would like to thank all of you for coming, and also would like to have a message from each of you as well. So John, is there a message that you would like to give our community?
I hope you've seen today that we are totally committed to this. Please speak to us. If you don't tell us what's happening and who the offenders are, it's difficult for us to find out, because as we've all said and Kieran said, the victims don't really tell us. So it's everyone's responsibility in the community, whether it's the police professionals, education, health. family, friends. It's everyone's job to do it.
Everyone come forward. Bhupendra, is there anything you
Just the
like to say?
National CSE Awareness Week. It kicks off on Monday, so all week, every day up until the 17th of March, which is the launch that the London perspective is doing. So we've got key partners turning up, and it's not just, as John has said, it's not just about, let the professionals get on with it. Actually, it's the whole community, includes professionals, parents, children, their friends, family, and everyone, because we've got this, we have got a moral obligation to report this because it's not right. CSE is not right.
Definitely. And
And
Kieran, would
there
you
are
like to add?
several charities out there that could help. Parents, professionals, you have NSPCC, Think You Know is a brilliant charity. You have Safer London, who provide support for victims of CSE. We have PACE, which is aimed at parents in regards to online help. There are so many charities out there that can help. Childline, 101, anonymously,
So many.
Crime Stoppers, and one is the most important one is the online one, which John and we all talked about, is CEOPS. CEOPS has a massive resource, so you can just type in on Google CEOP, CEOP, which is Child Exploitation Online Protection. So there's lots and lots of resources. If a parent wants information, they can gain information from that site.
That's absolutely, I think that information is absolute gold, because it's so important for the parents to know who they can communicate with and where they can go to go for help. But I would like to thank all of you once again. It's been honestly a great honour to have all of you here, and it's been very, very informative. I mean, you've opened my eyes to all these new laws that I didn't even know existed, but now I know that they do. And it's good for all of you to know that people like John, people like Kieran, people like Bhupendra are here to help you. And it's not just them, it's all of the other organisations that Kieran has mentioned as well. You can get in touch with any one of them. So I'm not going to sit here today and say contact the one number. My email address is at the bottom of the screen. If you do want to give us any feedback in regards to the show, please do so. Any emails that you do send through, they will be completely private and confidential. And it's up to you, how far you want to take this. The community is suffering, these children are suffering, and only you can put an end to this. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. I hope it's been informative. Thank you for tuning in. See you.